Hi, welcome to Krishna Sutras. This is going to be my new series in which I'm going to mostly be talking about Indian philosophy, that is the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita mainly, and also the Yoga Sutras of Rishi Patanjali, and also our entire concept, the Hindu concept of attaining liberation, moksha, through the way of yoga, through the way of knowledge, through the way of karma. And whether or not we've understood the concept of liberation and moksha itself, and life and death, and everything in between, have we really understood that in the correct way? And also about the law of assumption. I'll tell you what law of assumption is in just a minute, but it has been my recent discovery that the law of assumption and a lot of concepts from older civilizations as well are so similar to Hinduism concepts, which we have probably not understood in the correct way. And that is my audacious claim, but we have not really understood any of that in the way that it was meant. So, if you want to find out what I really mean by that, please watch the rest of this video. So, what is law of assumption? You might have heard about the law of attraction. It made waves with the movie Secret, and law of attraction. It is practiced by a lot of people around the world. A lot of successful people also claim to have used it and become successful after that. Everybody, I think, practices their own version of law of attraction as well, but law of assumption was popularized by a philosopher called Neville Goddard. I admire the man greatly. He is long since passed away, but he has written a lot of books. If you're interested, I'll put the links in the description below. But the law of assumption is exactly what it sounds like. What you assume to be true of yourself. Okay, let me say that again. What you assume to be true of yourself. What you assume to be true of your life. What you assume to be true of the people that you're surrounded with, what you assume to be true about the world, is what actually happens in your life as well. Your assumptions about you and your place in the world. That is exactly what life reflects back to you. Now I'm talking about very core basic principles of the law of assumption. For example, that the world and your life is merely a mirror which is reflecting back to you your assumptions about yourself. It's a delayed reflection. So the world by itself does not have any control or any real power over you. It is what happens in here and what happens in here that actually dictates what happens to you in your life. I hope that is clear so far. So the outside world, including this body that we see, is called the 3D world. 3D meaning three-dimensional world, because our world is made of 3 dimensions. There is length, breadth, and depth. Length, breadth, depth, or height. To everything that we see, everything can be measured in 3 dimensions. So that is the 3D world. And the 3D world is dead. It's a delayed reflection. Okay? One step further it has gone. It's not just a reflection, it's a delayed reflection of what you assume to be true of yourself. And what really controls the way that our life is or how it goes is dominant assumptions about yourself. Now, these assumptions, we have not really examined them. That is the problem. Because society tells us a couple of rules to live by. Our parents tell us rules to live by. Our schools and the education system tells us a lot of things, and we have just assumed them. We have never really examined them. We have never questioned them. We have not been skeptical about it. Let me just give you an example. When we were children, we did not say that I want to do an MBA and have a steady job. No. When we were children, we said that our dreams were to be an astronaut or a prime minister of the country or a president of a corporation, or I want to go to the, I want to go to the moon. Like there was no inhibition to our dreams and ambitions. But as we keep getting older, the assumptions from the outside are sort of thrust upon us, and we just assume them, and we are beaten into submission by fear, by insecurity, and then at some point, before we know it, we just stop questioning, or we stop assuming newer things about ourselves or things that are good for us. So that is the problem. Now, how does this relate to the Indian philosophy or the Bhagavad Gita, for example? I was reading the Bhagavad Gita the other day, and the things that I came across in the Gita, after now have studied law of assumption for just a little while, now I am looking at the Bhagavad Gita in a completely different light. For those of you who do not know what the Bhagavad Gita is set up as, basically there is the army of the Kauravas, which is the quote unquote bad side, the villains. And then there is the army of the Pandavas and their allies, which is the good side. And Lord Krishna, who has actually given all this knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita, is on the good side. And Arjun, who is their star warrior, has come to the scene of the battle, and he's looking onto the enemy side, and he sees that all his relatives and his teachers and people that he actually likes and loves, nephews and friends also, are on the enemy side, on the bad side, because of some politics. And he says, how can I fight these people? If I kill these people, I will never be able to live with myself. And this is where Krishna gives him the greatest possible knowledge about how he should stand up and fight, because he's looking at things wrong. And what does he tell Arjun is actually applicable to the entire world, to like all of us, if we choose to read it like that. We are all Arjun, one way or the other, at some point or the other, where we have forgotten our true self. We have forgotten the true nature of who we are. We have forgotten the true nature of our life even. And we are in the doldrums. We have become emotional. We are in some sort of a panic spiral. We don't know what the clear way out of this is. This has happened to all of us. And then this knowledge comes in to sort of sort this all out in our head. So that knowledge, I have now noticed, is so similar to what the law of assumption actually tells us to do, which is go within. So the law of assumption is not just saying that the world outside is dead. It is saying that that dead world is animated or brought to life only because of how you move through it. You make these states alive, whether it's the state of poverty or it's the state of wealth. If it's the state of being healthy or it's a state of being sick, it's a state of being a successful person or the state of being a failure. All these opposites, there are infinite states, right? These states are made alive because we have assumed them about ourselves. That's the only reason the state comes alive in our life. So Neville Goddard says, go within, fulfill yourself within. And how, etc., we will see that in subsequent videos. But he says, satisfy yourself from within. And then once you persist in that, the outside world will change. Now, there are specific techniques also that Neville Goddard speaks about on how to assume a new state. If you already think that you're a failure, or if you're, overweight, or if you're sick and you're not healthy, or if you're poor and you're debt-ridden and you want to be rich and successful and happy, and if you're single, you want to, be happily partnered. See, all these are states. So Neville Goddard has specific techniques that he recommends with which you can change your state from being of a poor person to being a wealthy person, of being unhappy with life to being happily partnered. How do you change this state? There are specific techniques about it. But my main point is, he says, go within. Don't try to keep your hustle on the outside. The outside will not help you if you don't help yourself from within. And let me just tell you what the Bhagavad Gita says. I have actually made notes because it was so interesting to me. There is a verse in the 3rd chapter, the 17th and the 18th verse, which says, but the man who is devoted to the self, okay, and content in the self alone, has no obligatory duty. Hear me out. He has no object in the world to gain by doing an action, nor does he incur any loss by non-performance of an action, nor has he any need of depending on any being for any object. This does not mean do not desire. That is a very big problem with having too many interpretations of singular words. For example, the self. The self here is meant as the capital S self, the higher self, your subconscious mind, the God within, or whatever else you want to call it. The name doesn't really matter. But the man who is devoted to the self and is content in the self alone, the higher self, not your mind, has no obligatory duty, meaning you don't need to, you're not obligated to do mere actions on the outside. I think that is where we get really tired, because we keep acting on the outside and then nothing really changes. We've been told to work hard, etc., etc. But unless that action is rooted in the self or is inspired from the self, unless you change the self, it's not going to happen on the outside. He has no object in the world to gain by doing an action. The world can't really give you anything. Nor does he incur any loss by non-performance of an action, nor has he any need of depending on any other being for any object. Meaning to say that once you are devoted to the self, once you are convinced in the self, once you have changed the self from within, once you have changed your state from within, things on the outside will be orchestrated in a way to suit that current state that you have. I'm really tempted to go on, but I think I'll stop here for now for this video. But this is where the law of assumption, does a little crossover with a lot of Indian philosophy. And dare I say that we have not really gone to the depths of what really the Bhagavad Gita means. Because I will be very honest with you, I want a good life. I don't want to renounce anything. I do not want to go to the mountains. I don't want to live a simple life. I want a fantastic life. And nowhere in any of our scriptures is it written, just drop everything and only think about liberation and sit every day, 24 hours a day and meditate. No. So don't listen to anybody who says don't run behind money or don't aspire for a better life. Please, no. Don't make that mistake. We are all entitled to have a good life. The only thing that we need to learn is the correct method to do it. Okay, I'm going to stop. Otherwise, it's going to become an endlessly long video because I'm extremely passionate about this subject, as you can tell. Please let me know how you like this. I am obviously going to make a lot of videos about this because I really love this topic. And maybe in another video, I will also tell you the outstanding and mind-blowing manifestations, actual real-life manifestations that I've had after I started practicing the law of assumption. See you in the next video. Take care.